It's time for Good Game Spawn Point.
Hey, did you guys know there's more than 10,000 different types of mushrooms in the world?
And yet none are good on pizza.
Controversial. Well, at least they come in handy when you're trying to win a military conflict. As we find out today in our review of Mushroom Wars 2.
Plus, Finn and Jake hit the high seas in Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion.
Things don't look ship-shape here.
Also, I learned how to make a custom controller to play Space Invaders.
Oh, you could use little toadstools for thumbsticks.
No, that's way impractical. They're too squishy. Handy gaming snack, though.
Mushroom Wars 2 is a real-time strategy game that requires you to take charge of a fierce army, crush your withering opponents, and dominate the battlefield.
Sure, if you replace army with tiny mushroom people, opponents with adorable critters, and battlefield with lush little secret gardens.
Oh, yeah. Prepare for war!
Originally released in 2016 for mobile before being ported to PC, Mushroom Wars 2 is a rather quaint little strategy game that puts a creative spin on the whole multiple warring factions genre.
So, Rad, why are we reviewing a game that's over 2 years old, I hear you ask? Well, it's just been released on the Switch, a console that doesn't often see many real-time strategy games. In fact, RTS on console is quite rare, so we thought it was worth seeing if some strategy on the go is just what the Switch needs.
And straight away you can see that mobile pedigree shine through from the game's simple yet unique gameplay. Unlike traditional RTS games, which see you micromanaging single units, here you're put in command of whole waves of troops that you must use to outwit and outmaneuver your opponent.
Ah, yes, and you do this by outnumbering them. Each stage begins with a set number of structures dotted about the map. You must then work to increase the size of your army by upgrading your villages. Once you have enough warriors, you can send a specific amount to go forth and capture opposing structures, as long as your troops outnumber theirs.
Ah, yes, the Mushroom Wars truly are wars of attrition.
I don't know how healthy it would be to eat these particular mushrooms, Darren.
Negative, not nutrition. Attrition. It means to reduce the strength of your opponent through sustained pressure. It's a tried and tested tactic of many a strategist. By not giving your opponent a single moment of respite, you can overwhelm them, leading to glorious victory.
Downright devilish, Darren. But he is right. The bigger your army, the better your chances. And this style of gameplay cleverly shifts attention away from troop versus troop conflict, instead allowing you to focus on the big picture.
Plus, I think this helps keep matches relatively short and manageable. Along with villages that continually spawn more of your mushy military, there are also towers that fire on troops within range and forges that improve your unit's attack and defense. These can all be upgraded at the cost of some of your troops. They've probably all been promoted.
Oh, everything you need to know is drip-fed to you through the game's campaign mode. And while the tutorial moves at a snail's pace, eventually you are introduced to the game's more interesting heroes and their skills, which are abilities that can be activated mid-battle to hopefully turn the tide in your favour. And these change depending on which hero you do select, with some heroes' abilities being more offensive than defensive.
And they do add another much-needed layer of strategy to the fights. But Goose, am I alone in saying that this is where the limitations of the console controls really started to stick out?
I'm glad you brought this up, because good controls are crucial to an RTS. Things can get super fiddly, so they're best played usually with a mouse pointer.
Yeah, absolutely. And overall, I do think they've done a pretty good job of working with the Switch's layout. For example, having the target reticles stick to structures helps it feel less like a replacement for a mouse cursor. But more than that, I think we're overlooking the obvious here.
Touchscreen controls?
Touchscreen controls! The mobile version of this game proves that not only do they work, but they work better. And sure, the Switch needs to work in docked mode too, but not even having them as an option when playing in handheld mode was infuriating.
Yeah, it's a strange omission that only really highlights the fact that thumbstick controls are never the best way to play these kind of games. Especially considering that playing this online is cross-platform, putting Switch players at a sizable disadvantage.
That's all true, but I do think that online play is where the most fun is to be had. Especially when you have up to 3 other armies to contend with, all not knowing who will attack who, watching little unspoken truces build up and break down. It's far more exciting than going up against the AI.
Yeah, I much preferred coming back to this for quick online sessions rather than slogging through that repetitive campaign. Although having all the heroes already unlocked from the start means winning the battles feels a bit pointless. And again, I just can't help thinking that the Switch might not be the best fit for this game.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? At its core, Mushroom Wars 2 is a challenging little RTS that's easy to pick up and play. And if the Switch is your main gaming device, then there's some good strategy to dig into. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 rubber chickens.
Well, Rad, while I can't fault the gameplay here, I just didn't find myself drawn back to play anymore. I mean, maybe it's those console controls or that bland overall design, or just the fact that the Switch version of this game feels a tad undercooked. I'm giving it 1.5 out of 5 rubber chickens.
Undercooked mushrooms are the worst.
No, thank you.
Hey, where are all the snacks I left in the scoop snacket? How am I supposed to perform and inform under these conditions? Oh, it's okay, Rad. You can do this. Snacks or no snacks. Just think of boat meal. Right, it's time to scoop. First up, some more info about Xbox's next console, or rather, consoles. It seems Microsoft may have its head in the cloud, with reports that Xbox will launch a dedicated streaming console alongside a more typical next-gen console, both aimed to launch around 2020. The new streaming console will apparently make use of Microsoft's cloud infrastructure, so Darren might have some extra company up there in the cloud soon. I hope he has the guest room ready. Next, some good old-fashioned hidden cheat codes have been discovered in the recent release of Sonic Mania Plus. The codes and instructions on how to use them have now been published online, many of which are in-jokes or Sonic game release date references. The cheats include game-altering features like infinite continues, all emeralds, and squirrel mode. Oh, sometimes I wish life had a squirrel mode. Moving on, and this year's NBA Live 19 will include a female creator-player feature for the first time ever. Both male and female players will have the same experiences in the single-player story mode, The One, as well as being able to compete in mixed-gender competitions. A nice shot at leveling the playing field, or court, in sports games. And finally, prize crates will be removed from Forza Motorsport 7. Although players were never charged real money for the crates, they were generally unpopular for basically being loot boxes. Cars that were exclusive to the crates will now be available to purchase directly with credits. Developer Turn 10 also announced that paid tokens won't be introduced to Forza Motorsport 7 or the upcoming Forza Horizon 4. Maybe community disdain for loot boxes and microtransactions has forced them to take a stand. Now the extra scoop. This week, it's a fan-made project using LEGO and Fortnite. Using the construction game LEGO Worlds, user Barely Regal blends the iconic styles of both game worlds to produce a fun recreation of Tilted Towers. And if you've come across something extra scoopy, why not let us know right here? Now to replenish my snacket. Fruit! Yeah!
Vincent van Gogh, Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, Andy Warhol. These are all artists you would expect to see at the National Gallery of Victoria. But the artwork I'm here to see wasn't made by any of these famous artists. It was created by a man named Tomohiro Nishikado. If you haven't heard of him, well, you probably should have, because he was the designer of a little game called Space Invaders. Space Invaders is one of the first ever arcade shooting games, exploding onto the scene 40 years ago in 1978. Now it's on loan here, along with a ton of other masterpieces from the Museum of Modern Art in the US. And as part of the exhibit, the gallery is running workshops for young spawnlings to help them explore the design and history of the iconic game. So I'm here with Daniel, who's part of the NGV Education Department, working with kids all over Victoria and Australia. Why do you think it's so important for a game like Space Invaders to be here?
I think especially, and you would have seen the amount of young people that we had playing these games, like, you know, art kind of really reflects what's going on in society. And, you know, our young people now are playing games, and games are, you know, they are a design. And so I think it's really cool that young people can go, you know what, I may not be into painting or drawing or sculpture, but I like games and I like design, and I could use those as my tools to create these artworks as well. What did you all think of Space Invaders? You just went through and played it in the gallery. What did you think?
It was fun!
Fun? What was something that you liked most about the game?
How when you like shoot one of them, then it sort of like implodes.
Oh yeah, like...
It's obviously a very popular game and a very old game. What is it about it that you think makes it so special today?
I think it's quite iconic. When it came out, it was really, really cutting edge. So, you know, I'm sure kids will look at it now and go, oh, it's just some colours and some sprites. But when they play it, and we saw when we went down there as well, like, they loved playing it. So I think just that the game design is really, really strong, and it's definitely held the test of time. You saw it how it's in colour. When this first came out, it actually wasn't in colour. They couldn't do colour graphics back then. So over the screen of the arcade, they would put coloured strips of cellophane to cover the aliens, and so it looks like they're in colour, but they're actually not. The other challenge that he had to overcome, which is why we really like designers, because designers are really good at coming up and solving really interesting challenges, was just how to get this game to work, because the computers were so weak. When you play, it starts off really slow, doesn't it? And it got really fast. And the reason why is because when all of the aliens are on the screen at once, the computer can't handle it and it slows down. And when you shoot the aliens and they start to disappear, the computer can run a bit faster because there's less on the screen. Yeah, so it speeds up.
How important is it for the kids to get involved in these workshops, do you think?
It's a really great way for them to kind of like see what is under these works of art and how they're put together, and starting to make those really great kind of design choices, as opposed to just being like, say, consumers of games. They're now creators of games.
With our heads full of inspiration, it was time to see if we could design something of our own.
We're going to actually start building our controllers. So let's get cracking.
Let's do it. Let's go, go. Obviously, you teach the course, so you know all about it, but what's your favourite part?
I think is seeing what the guys come up with, you know, seeing what these young guys come up with. You know, I may say to do one thing, but they'll make a cookie controller. You know, they make something...
As we saw.
Yeah, exactly, something completely left field, and they're so creative and they're so inventive, and they're not tied down by, like, you know, we think how things should be and how they should look and how everyone should play games. They're just like, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I want, I'm going to make a unicorn. So I think that's the best part, just seeing what they come up with and the stories that they tell.
So this is the GGSP controller I've made. Not as fancy as the others, but we've got our basics here. We've got right, left, and shoot. And we're gonna see, with the help of Henry here, if we can use it to take on Space Invaders. Do you want to do controls?
Sure.
You don't think of traditionally video games in a gallery like this. How important do you think it is for kids to be exposed to this kind of video games are art?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's showing them that art doesn't have to be paint and a paintbrush, you know? It can be the tools that they're using today. And the kids that we're working with now, like, they are using iPads and keyboards and code, and they're the paintbrushes that they're using. So I think it's really great for them to see that, you know, the things that they love now, their hobbies, they're enjoying, like, they can be art.
Well, I had a blast today, but what did the rest of the class think? What was your favourite part of the workshop today?
Making and building.
We're obviously in a gallery, but we have video games here. Is that weird for you?
Sorta, but I get the point because it was the first iconic video game.
What surprised you the most about the game Space Invaders?
How old it was.
Yes.
40 years old.
What do you think makes a game art?
I think the graphics.
Yeah?
And maybe how the game's played. And like what you can do inside it.
Games are really fun, but it's easy to forget just how much art and design went into making them. Looking back at a simple but classic game like Space Invaders is a great way to appreciate the lasting impact that good design can have in a game. The graphics, the characters, the menu have all been thought about and created in a way to evoke feeling in us. Just like these famous artworks. So remember to take the time to appreciate art, because you never know, it might be you making it one day.
Okay, Jem, strap yourself in and keep all your arms and legs inside the Ask SP desk at all times. It's time for a crazy rollercoaster ride of questions.
Sounds thrilling. First up, we have a video from Sebastian.
Hello, Good Game Swarm Points. I have 3 questions for you. 1. How many costumes are there in Super Mario Odyssey? 2. What is the hardest power moon you can think of getting? 3. What is the oldest Super Mario game that you can think of? See you.
Oh, thanks, Sebastian. In answer to your first question about how many costumes there are in Super Mario Odyssey, maybe we should get Darren in to confirm.
Already? Okay.
Greetings, Darren speaking.
Hey, Darren, Gem and Goose here. Just wondering how many costumes there are in Super Mario Odyssey.
Well, Jem, at my last count, there were 52 costumes, with more being added at regular intervals. This tally includes Mario's default outfit, unlockable costumes, and those added in updates or as DLC thus far. I've generally counted full outfits rather than individual pieces, with a few exceptions, such as the captain's hat and the invisibility hat, that are just hats, and the skeleton suit and Hakama suit that don't come with hats.
Oh, and are Mario's boxer shorts included in that count too, Darren?
Affirmative, Goose, though best if we don't speak too much about Mario's undergarments. There's a reason they're called unmentionables.
Oh, I see.
Oh, and earlier this year, some data miners also leaked images of what could be upcoming costumes. So keep an eye out for more additions.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Darren.
You're most welcome. Cheerio.
Bye.
Boy. Now, moving on to the question of the hardest power moon we can think of getting. Well, the jump rope in the Metro Kingdom and the volleyball in the Seaside Kingdom took me ages to nail. But I would say the multi-moon in the darker side is probably the hardest to get in my opinion. If you count that as a power moon, technically it's worth 3. Not only do you need to finish the main story, but have to have a total of 500 power moons to even get to the darker side, but the challenge of making it through that final level is so arduous.
Oh yeah, that has got to be the toughest I can think of too. But you know what they say?
What do they say?
Well, you can't spell arduous without us.
Do they say that? What does that even mean?
Well, it means, you know, we like a challenge.
Oh, well, we sure do.
Yeah. Moving on to the oldest Super Mario game that we can think of, well, I believe that would have to be the first Super Mario Bros. For the NES from 1985.
Ah, yes. Mario did appear as Jumpman in the original Donkey Kong arcade game before this. And there was a Mario Brothers arcade game too, but I wouldn't consider these to be Super Mario games.
No, I wouldn't either. You can't spell Super Mario without super, you know, as they say.
Right. They say that too, do they?
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to this question from Alex.
You know what they say about Alex?
What?
You can't spell a roll question.
Hey, GGSP, is Whole Night available on iPad? P.S. Gem, say this. And also, it's cast you will be attacked by my mutant potatoes. Gotta watch those mutant potatoes.
Ugh.
Well, thanks, Alex. In answer to your question about whether Hollow Knight is available on the iPad, currently it is not, though it did recently launch on the Switch.
Now, as far as we know, Aussie developers Team Cherry haven't announced any plans to bring the game to iOS. For now, anyway. But if you do like Hollow Knight, you might like to try some fun, similar style games that are available on iPad, like Dust, An Elysian Tale, Dandara, Waking Mars, or Former .8 Go.
Okay, so I guess we'll say from mutant potatoes. I wonder if they're teenage mutant ninja potatoes. I mean, they have baby potatoes, so why not teenage potatoes? And under the right conditions, I don't see why they couldn't mutate.
Jem, you're potato rambling.
Oh, sorry.
Moving on. And speaking of Dust, An Elysian Tale, our last question comes from Stefania. Hi guys, I've been playing Dust, An Elysian Tale a lot lately, and I'm trying to figure out when the confirmed sequel of this game will be released or announced. P.S. You guys are awesome.
Aw, thanks, Stefania. You're pretty awesome yourself. As to when the sequel to Dust Elysian Tale will be released or announced, well, it's hard to say. Developer Dean Dodrell said back in 2013 he would do a sequel at some point, but it wouldn't be the next game he'd work on.
And since then, it was announced that Dust Elysian Tale is coming to the Switch, but Dodrell seems to have been working on other projects, like Never Stop Sneakin', a humorous arcade-style stealth game that was released earlier this year. So we'll have to stay tuned, I guess.
More like Never Stop Hoping for a Dust sequel.
Yeah, well, as they say, we're out of time, and that concludes the Question Coaster Ride for today. If you'd like to send us a question, go here and do so.
And remember, the video questions we use on the show will score a GGSP pin, so keep them coming. Hey Goose, are there height restrictions on this question coaster?
There are no height restrictions on any of my metaphors, Jim.
So I'm tall enough to get on?
No, it's not real. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Adventure time! The pirates of the Enchiridion is a 3D RPG game. Ice Kingdom's melted, it's adventure time. That was beautiful, right?
Oh, I can't believe you did singing without me. I've been robbed.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
You may recognise Finn the Human and Jake the Dog from the TV show Adventure Time, which is a beloved cartoon with a signature sense of wackiness.
The dynamic duo have starred in a number of video games before, but this is the first 3D RPG adventure they've ever embarked on.
My kingdom is ruined, my crown's gone forever.
The Ice King's crown is acting up, and he's been melting his kingdom instead of freezing it. This has flooded the land of Ooo and caused an uprising of pirates.
Yarr! You're on a mission to figure out what's going on and help your friends along the way. To do this, you'll be interrogating people for information and engaging in turn-based battles.
Interrogations involve swapping between Finn and Jake, with either good cop or bad cop questioning.
Whoa, things don't look ship-shape here.
This isn't very tricky or interesting, as they'll often tell you what tone to use, and you choose via timing a spin wheel correctly.
Man, you know you've always been my favorite candy guy. Tell us what you know so we can find PB.
Occasionally, you'll have to figure out what mood to use on your own, but that's all the challenge there is.
The combat is a little bit more complex, but not by a lot. You can choose to attack, block, heal, or use special abilities. There's also ultimate abilities, which are a little more exciting. I thought Jake's was the best with his cool bulldozer move. Overall though, I found the combat pretty repetitive and not very challenging.
Yeah, you can pass most fights if you simply have enough healing potions, which is pretty dull. But what did you think of the story?
Well, like everything else in the game, it's pretty simple.
Princess, are you okay? Why are these pirates holding you prisoner?
I be fine, Finn, but you got to get me out of here.
Aw, man, PB's talking like a pirate too.
It's mostly told through long cutscenes, and it feels like just a way of pushing you through the areas. I'm a fan of the TV show, but the game just doesn't have the same good pacing and thus doesn't have the same appeal.
I love the show too, and I thought the story was interesting enough.
That's High Admiral candy corn to you, landlubbers.
At times, it feels like watching the cartoon. And while it's not a deep, compelling mystery, you still get a sense of uncovering new parts to the puzzle, which was good enough for me. It does constantly give you a goal and then sidetrack you with another mission you have to complete first, but that's pretty standard gaming fare.
True, and if you don't mind a bit of mindless running around, then you can keep yourself busy. Main story missions include things like collecting Marceline's hat so she can walk out in the sun, or freeing Princess Bubblegum from her pirate prison.
Along the way, you can also pick up side quests as you roam the open world.
Finn! Jake! Over here!
These aren't thrilling at all, and sometimes it even shows you exactly where you need to go.
I need them over there!
Just let me discover things. They feel more like annoying sidetracks than anything else.
It is quite fun seeing characters that you know and love from the show, but they didn't feel quite right.
How do you mean?
Well, I know the cartoon is 2D, so how they look in 3D is open for debate, but I just don't feel that Lumpy Space Princess should look quite so, flat.
Hey!
LSP? Get out of here before—
Quiet, landlubber.
Finn, she's one of them.
No, Jake, I'm like their leader.
Also, the Ice King doesn't seem right. The way his mouth slides flat on his face like that.
And here I am up to my southern hemisphere in melting Ice Kingdom.
It's just wrong.
As a being who has made his way into the digital world, I can confirm that the process sometimes changes things a bit. It's a natural part of this new stage in your life and nothing to be ashamed of.
And sometimes you dress like a pirate?
Well, this is Pirates of the Enchiridion, not regulars of the Enchiridion. Arr, arr.
I do see what he's trying to say, but because so much of the game is shonky, it's hard to feel like Flat Lumpy Space Princess was intentional.
Rad shonky is indeed the word. I had a moment where Marceline was talking, but the animation triggered before the audio played. So her line ended up getting cut off by the next part of the scene.
And took my hat and threw it in the water. I'm stuck out here. It was the only
We need to get that crown.
I experienced maximum shonky when I hit a game-breaking bug. My ability to push and pull items just suddenly stopped working, meaning I couldn't activate these levers to free BMO. There was no way to fix it, so I just couldn't play any further.
That's off the charts shonky. Overall, Adventure Time Pirates the Enchiridion has some fun moments, but it's overly simple and completely lacks polish. I'm giving it 1.5 out of 5 rubber chickens.
There are some cool ideas here, but it just feels unfinished and broken. And for an open world game, the open world is very empty. I'm giving it 1 out of 5 rubber chickens.
You know, guys, watching that makes me actually want to play Sea of Thieves again.
Nay, Captain Goose, that game be much better.
Well, next week on the show, we go full Viking in Banner Saga 3.
We write our names and our stories on these banners.
Also, we get into a pool panic.
Do you notice the striking parallels between real life and billiards?
Plus, I go hands-on with the amazing Toys to Life game Starlink Battle for Atlas.
And I hope you've all been watching our Friday live streams. It's another chance to win a GGSP pin, and it's a whole crazy amount of fun. Until next time, be nice, have fun, and keep gaming. Brad out.
Gem out.
Goose out.